about 8 years ago. For the last 7 years, I ran a masonry restoration business. And let's just say when I took the business over, it was in rough shape. Let me just see if I'm live here. Yes. All right. Good. So when I came into we'll come back to the homeless thing. when I came into the masonry restoration business, they had lost not quite 100,000 a year for the 3 years before I came in. It was bad. A lot of that was talking to contractors here. So some of that was debt. So they had taken on, just unsecured debt at, criminal rates. And so a lot of it was with vendors, vendors that hadn't gotten paid. So it was, to say that it was tough is putting it mildly. We went from that to then losing, if it was possible, almost 900,000 over the next 2 years, my first 2 years as a CEO. And then we went on to make like roughly $1 million a year for the next 3 years. So, how am I here talking to you today? So I spent my last year in the business in 2022, trying to buy the company. And it was, when I came into the business, so obviously with having, with being with being in such rough shape, the business, the stock itself, right, the enterprise didn't have any value. It was really just the underlying assets. In that time, so with the money that we made, the business was actually able to be sold as a whole, right? So not liquidated and sold off into parts like as an asset sale, but actually could have been, we had gotten a valuation for about 4.5 million. And then I was going to pay a little bit of a premium to that, which I won't get into why right now. But so I was going to pay a little bit more than 5. And so, that all happened in 5 years. I ended up backing out of the deal, for reasons, again, that I'll maybe tell that story another live, but I backed out of the deal last fall. And it was pretty clear we weren't going to be able to put something together, which is unfortunate. Anyway, so again, in my first 2 years, though, we went from losing almost 100,000 to then losing almost 900,000. And I think that one of the things that I learned, because I had owned a business in Chicago with a partner. We co-founded a business. He's brilliant. We had a lot of success together. It was hard, very hard, but it was definitely a different experience to coming into something that was in such rough shape. And I'd say the thing that, there's everything rhymes, right? And in business, there's no straight lines. And I mean, everything's bumpy. It's just a matter of how bumpy it is. This was, again, coming into this business, it was really, really bumpy. And so to give you an idea of how rough it was. So after I took over as CEO, so I came in as an estimator and then took over as chief operating officer in the fall of 2016. So literally like 3 or 4 months in, I restructured the company's financials with a regional bank. And, so we were able to pay off the vendors. So get the vendors made whole and do some other things, get some working capital, et cetera, et cetera. So I took over as chief operating officer while I was doing that. And then the next summer of 2017, I took over as chief executive officer, which I had at that point like 13 months of experience. Looking back on it now, to be perfectly honest, I would today, I would not have hired me that me back then to do that job. I was so underprepared. But I didn't know what I didn't know. So after the first year, we had lost, I can't remember what it was, several $100,000. It was bad. And all of the front office employees went to the owner, threatened to quit unless he fired me. Um, that's that next year in 18, which was another really brutal year. I nearly got into a fist fight with the general contractor we were working for. This guy was like the size of a Pittsburgh Steeler offensive lineman. And I mean, had he, like, I was basically daring him to punch me in the face. Had he done it, I would have, who knows what kind of permanent damage he would have done. So anyway, so it took 5 years to get the business from basically liquidation value to dig out of the hole it was in, and then also out of the hole that I dug for it to, to where we were making a lot of money. And then, actually had, a formal valuation from a third party saying the business was worth 4.5 million. Again, I was going to pay 5. So, as hard as that was, it wasn't nearly as difficult as what came before that. What came before that, as I said a few minutes ago, was I was 8 years ago, I was homeless and driving for Uber. So how did that happen? Right. And I mean, I didn't understand it for a few years, until just a few years ago. So let's go back. So I'm 47 today. At 39 years old, I was a guy with a fair amount of status in Chicago. I had been a successful JP Morgan banker, and then co-founded, again, like I said, a business with a business partner. We did really well with that. I had a fast car. I had an AMG Mercedes, which, still one of my favorite cars all time. And I had the life that a lot of people want. At 4, I could get into restaurants and certain bars and clubs. And, like for a guy under 40 years old, like that's what a lot of guys want. And I had a lot of those things. I, had a lot of confidence. I was comfortable walking into almost any room. And I mean, I would say, like, I felt, sometimes, and this obviously is a little bit of like, hubris or arrogance or whatever, but, I felt invincible at times, right? Like, cause, it had all these things happen, and I was younger, right? However, like 3 things happened all at once. So here's cue the record scratch. I was going through a divorce as we started the company, which I wouldn't recommend, by the way. Don't go through a divorce and then try to start a company, because you might succeed like I did, but it'll take all of your life force and energy. So I was going through divorce, and even though the business was very successful, I mean, what it took to do that wasn't just time and energy, but it took money and cash. So I had invested a lot of my capital, a lot of my cash into the business so that we could, get it off the ground. We opened 2 offices in like 11 months or 10 months. And that stuff is expensive. I had to fly to go see some of my clients. So I had spent quite a bit of money getting the business off the ground, as did my business partner. So that was number 2. Number 3 is I had an expensive lifestyle, and I did not moderate it to prepare for the war that was my divorce. So here's some things that, unless you've lived in your car, you probably don't know. One, if you leave your car running in a empty parking lot and there's no other cars around you, the police are going to come up and knock on your window, especially when they walk up and they see that you're sleeping in the car. So when I still had the Mercedes and I was sleeping in my car, and that happened a lot, which was brutal because it chewed up the gas, like it just guzzled the gas. And so I'd literally, overnight I would like burn like almost a third of a tank. But, cops would come up and they would, like knock on my window, wake me up. And I mean, I literally, I don't remember how many, but I would go from like secret spot to secret spot to try to find places where I could sleep without being woken up in the middle of the night. Um, Eventually I did find a place. It was like right off of what's like called Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. And it was basically because it was a big parking lot right on the lake. So right on the lake shore. And the cops didn't bug me because it was free parking. And so people that lived like in the apartments across like over the big parkway would park there and walk home. So, so, so my car fit right in. Um, so anyway, so that was, I'm talking about it now, like laughing and smiling and joking, but I mean, I would sit there and, when you're alone like that, you have a lot of time to think, which is hard. And I mean, I just would think to myself, like, how did I get here? How, how did this happen? And, you know, again, it was, um, it was a confluence of events. It was starting a business, which I'd already planned to do, and then deciding to end my marriage, and then going through all of that and all the costs, and then, not moderating my lifestyle. And, and then, like having all of that happening and then ending up, with nothing. So, so it was to say that it was an experience being homeless. I mean, again, I would have to, I mean, at night there was no bathroom, right? So I would just pee in a milk jug. Um, I developed a network of clean family bathrooms around the city that I could sort of pop into in the morning and, sort of sponge bath clean, because again, I would have to, so I would wake up in the morning, I would, in the car, I would pee in the milk jug, and then I would go get like a hotel bathroom and I would sort of clean myself up and whatever else so that I could get, log into Uber and then go start picking people up and taking them to work and whatever else, during the morning rush hour. So, um, and that was hard. And then, so my money would go to fuel. And then it would go to, um, fuel and then food, obviously. And then, every you don't make a lot of money as an Uber driver. And again, this is 8 years ago. And so I would have about every week, I would have just about enough money to get a hotel room. So, and not in the city of Chicago, I would get a hotel room and I would find it, on one of the booking sites, and I would be like a Motel 6. I would drive all the way out to like an hour plus outside of the city where I could stay for like 65, 80, between 65 and $80 a night, just so I could have a shower, like, and a day off basically. Like, and I would just like basically like rest. And then, I would be back out back out in the car for another week or so. So, it was demoralizing because again, I had been this guy that, was like this man about town and, could get into these places and, call them, give them my name and all this. And now I'm homeless. And so, I mean, I was embarrassed. And I mean, I would say more than that, even ashamed, because I just, I didn't want to talk to anybody, if like any of my friends would text or call, I didn't take the call. I mean, it was because I was so utterly humiliated that I was living this life. So just because I was so fast forward, then I had to move back in with my parents in Western Pennsylvania, and because I couldn't make enough money, so I got a friend gave me a loan, and then I took that, I used it to make a security deposit on an apartment, and And that got me a few months of rent, but then I couldn't again keep up with my rent. So for a few months, I lived in an apartment in Chicago, and then I couldn't keep up with that. So I went to the guy that was on the lease, and I was like, as I was subletting from him, I was like, I'm sorry, man, I got to move out, but I will pay you. And I did. And I moved back in with my parents in Western Pennsylvania, United States. So now, so now, so there's no, at the time, there's no Uber there. So now I'm just at my parents' house with like $17 and I had nothing going on. And it was interesting because I thought, well, I'll just start educating myself because I literally didn't know what jobs to apply for. I mean, there was nothing really in my skill set, and I had let my investment licenses lapse. So those were gone, or well, they were almost gone, but I didn't want to go back into that field. And so I was in a real rough place. And, again, I don't know anybody there. My parents know people, but I didn't know anybody. And a guy that's friends with my father, Contractor, he said my dad told him I was in town and this and that. Who knows what he told him, but he told him I was in town. And so this guy asks, hey, can he read blueprints? My dad was like, well, he did we opened up 2 offices, and I had to understand blueprints to a point at that, to do that. I didn't know anything about blueprints, but I mean, I could understand where the doors and the windows were. And so he said yes, and told him I would, bragged like a father would brag. And so I went and I met him, and that ended up being, that's where I got hired as an estimator, and I knew nothing, zero, nothing. And I got to be honest, contracting like brick, masonry restoration, repair and restoration did not blow my skirt up. I mean, I wasn't like, oh, this is great. Like I thought, it's a paycheck and I need a paycheck because I have no money. And, because again, just because I was off the street, I wasn't, or, I was had a warm bed, even though it was at my parents' house. I had no money, right? I couldn't pay for anything. So I needed to, like save some cash. So I was just happy to have anything. So what was really beautiful about that was that I was able to take some of my skills, some of the things that I had done, used in my JP Morgan business, and then as a, owning a wealth management business, and, make some like quick, sort of like quick, get some quick wins, if you will, with how we manage cash flow and, talking to customers and this and that. And so I was able to add immediate value, which, was important. I mean, obviously it helped. It showed the team that I could, hang, even though I didn't know anything about masonry. And, at the same time, like I used to, I didn't, it took me about 8 weeks to realize how rough, like I didn't know, it's not like they opened the books when I got hired, and because I wasn't anything, I was just an estimator. So then, but a small business like that, as like it's hard to keep secrets. So it took me about 8 weeks or so to realize like this business is in rough shape. And, but it was an opportunity that I saw, okay, well, I can really add a lot of value here. So I'm going to learn how to do this for now anyway. And, and maybe we can turn this thing around. But it was very difficult. Like it wasn't easy because again, I had been homeless. I had no money. And so it took me, I don't know, a few months to save like maybe $10,000. And I just remember opening up my, taking my phone, opening up my bank, the bank app, and seeing that I had 10 grand. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Which I needed, by the way, because over the next couple of years, again, the business was in pretty rough shape, and had no cash. I mean, we literally, and some of you guys know, you've done this, right? Every 2 weeks it was like every 2 weeks, the biggest thing happening that week was making payroll, chasing down money, getting people to pay, getting time I didn't have payment applications, but, getting payment applications in, getting invoices to customers and like getting money in the door so we could meet payroll, which I'd never done that before. That was a very new experience. So when things were tough for my first 3 years, I mean, easily in my first 3 years, I went without getting a paycheck half the time, easily half the time. In fact, that first Thanksgiving in 16, I didn't get paid after Thanksgiving up until like the middle of January. I didn't get a paycheck. I just lived off of that money that I had saved. So it was tough. And again, it was, that was, I remember thinking to myself, like, I think I'm a smart enough guy. I don't think I'm a smart guy, but I think I'm smart enough. And it's like, I couldn't have landed some cushy, like sweet, easy sales gig or some like, middle management gig. This is the gig this is the gig that found me, because I didn't find it. It found me. But today, right? So today, we went on, like I said, we made a lot of money over the course of 4 years, particularly 3 years where we just like printed money. And that was a lot of stuff that I implemented, and, I learned from my mistakes. I wouldn't trade that for anything. I'm glad I didn't get the cushy gig. Today, the experience of being homeless is one of the greatest experiences of my life, because I have genuine appreciation for, everything that I have today. And I have genuine appreciation for, like, because it wasn't like I just showed up and, people started throwing money at me. I mean, I earned everything that I got over the last 6 years. So, and got myself out of debt. I mean, I not only did I, I saved some money and I got myself out of debt. So, but it wasn't easy. It was extremely difficult. And again, for me, I always look for the gift in things, and the gift in, going from, this kind of higher status guy to then like being homeless, living in my car and driving for Uber, to then like going into the really tough situation, and, and then being able to turn that around to where I was in a position to buy the company, and spend $5 million buying the company last year. The thing that I have that means the most to me, and that I have probably the most gratitude for, is the tough stuff, right? It's remembering what it was like to live in my car, and remembering, it just being a very lonely silence, being in the car at night. I'd be watching my phone, I'd be watching YouTube or something on my phone. I couldn't stream anything because I didn't have it. It was on my cell phone signal, right? And I have so much gratitude for that. And sometimes, like, when I get, so today, right, fast forward. So now, I've moved on to a different thing, and working with Jay and with some of you, and, and able to, now I'm in a position to show other people what I was able to do and how I was able to turn this thing around, and, share some of those same principles, which is awesome. To me, that's awesome. So, but sometimes, I'm a human, right? All my stuff works just like your stuff. And if I'm having a moment or a day where it's like, I'm frustrated, or I'm pissed about something, or, something's, I'm just, whatever, irritated, something pisses me off or whatever. And if I can't just shake it and move on, sometimes I'll ask myself, what would 2017 or 2018 Adrian have done to have your problems, right? What would he have given to have this version of you, like your problems right now? And the answer is, geez, what would homeless Adrian have done? to to have these problems? Well, the answer is that he would have done almost anything, right? I mean, he would have done anything not to be homeless anymore. So anyway, so I wanted to. I'm going to be. I'm going to be going live weekly, like this on Mondays, um, and essentially sharing the map, um, of how I, not just turned around a contracting business with no experience, but and like literally, like, there's no gatekeeping, right? So I'm just going to share the plays, like what I did. I mean, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and there's a lot of ugly. Um, so I'm going to share those things, and also some of the things that, because it wasn't just, again, it for me, the experience in the last several years, again, of going through this and turning this business around, it was, the the battle that I won in here was every bit. In fact, the most important thing that I did was what I did around, like, my headspace, my mental health, um, because it would have been easy to, man. I mean, things could have gone very differently. So I'm going to be on here weekly. If there's a topic or something that, if there's a topic that you want to hear more about, drop me a comment or send me a DM, um, and let me know. And if I can, I mean, if I can speak to it, I mean, I can't speak to everything because there's lots I don't know, but if it's something I can speak to, I'll absolutely do that. Also, remember, Jay and I go live every Friday at 3 o'clock Eastern time. So I'll be on here, just me, telling, telling you how I turned this thing around and sharing it. So hopefully you can get, a nugget or two for your business. And then Jay and I, again, every Friday at 3. So I go live Mondays at 12. Jay and I, Fridays at 3, are on here. So, last thing I'm going to say, if you're struggling with something, and you're comfortable with it, post it here in the group. And I think you'll be surprised at how many other people have gone through what you're going through. That's why we have the group, so that you as a contractor can connect with other contractors, and of course with us, and get value for your business. All right. So, hey, for those of you that tuned in for a few minutes or watch this on replay, thanks for hanging out with me for a few minutes. Again, I'll be here every Monday at 12. Jay and I are live every Friday at 3 p.m. And again, I'm here just to share, like, the map, because I built the system and a map. That's how I turned around the business. And Jay and I are going to be live every Friday, and we're going to be sharing about stuff that we're doing and showing you how to do certain things. And so it's all good stuff. And I guarantee you, there's going to be stuff that you can use in your business. All right. We'll see you soon.